Hi, I'm Michael Meyer, and I'm a journalist and nonfiction writer based in China. And here at the Bellagio Center, I'm writing a nonfiction book that blends history, reporting, and oral histories, and academic research on a single rice farm in northeast China. I think you know it's time to write a book when the book that you want to read doesn't exist. And I lived in China many, many years. I was first there as a Peace Corps volunteer back in 1995. And became fluent in Chinese. And my first book is about Beijing's oldest neighborhood as it faced destruction before the Beijing Olympics. And so it's a lived history of 3 years I spent in a courtyard house with several other families, minus heat, minus plumbing, minus a toilet, and really getting a feel for that neighborhood and recording the history of it and what was going on there. For a follow-up, I realized that nobody was writing about China's rural issues. Nobody was writing about Chinese agriculture. Or if they were, it was academics, but it wasn't for a general audience. It wasn't for somebody passing through an airport or a high school class to really get a feel for how 900 million people, the majority of the Chinese people and a huge chunk of our planet, actually live their lives and the issues facing them. And so this book, in many ways, is a continuation of my first book, which is The Last Days of Old Beijing, and that book looked at urbanization and the changes going on in Chinese cities. This book, in Manchuria, is examining a small village named Wasteland of 300 families, and they're facing many of the same issues that people in Chinese cities are facing. Issues around food production, water rights, land rights, financing, and the environment. It's interesting when you're doing nonfiction because you're really at the mercy of the people you're writing about, because you can't pick your characters and you can't pick your ending. And so when I started this book in this village, Wasteland, writing about Chinese farms, I thought I'd be writing about a single season, rice planting, tending the rice, and the rice harvest and going to market. Instead, what's happened is this narrative has gone much further beyond that, and 1 year of research is now turned into 3, because in this area, like many areas of rural China, the government has decided the farmers should urbanize and become urban citizens. This is part of China's drive to do what America did a century before and convert its population from largely rural to largely urban. And so in this small area, I've seen, especially over the last year, there's a large agricultural company, sort of the equivalent of agribusiness in the States, that's come in and is offering farmers a deal. We'll buy your patty of land, which is 1/6 of an acre, which you've relied upon for decades as your subsistence and your livelihood. We'll buy your house, we'll raise your house, but we'll provide you a new apartment in a 4-story apartment building in the vicinity of your family farm. And so that's the bargain that the farmers in this village are facing right now. They don't have to sell their land or transfer their land, because you can't officially sell land that is state-owned. But you can decide to move into an apartment with heat, with running water, maybe a better environment for your child to grow up in, or if your child is going to have a child, and so on. And so it's really an interesting compromise to watch farmers, individuals, family by family, deciding what to do. Should they give up the till, as it were, or should they continue farming? Being here at Bellagio has been an enormous help to my thinking about this work. Not so much the facts and materials I've gathered and the time to sort those out, but really to focus on my audience. It's very difficult when you're writing in China and living in China to remember that the people you're writing about are not going to read your work. You're writing this for a Western audience, or maybe it will be in translation, but you're writing it for people outside the community. And so you really need to slow down and take the time to explain these issues. Why are things the way they are? What is the legal framework? How does planting work? Where do people get their seed? What are water rights? And in the short time I've been here nearly 2 weeks now, it's been incredibly helpful for me to talk to people from all over the world, not just Americans, but to hear from someone from Brazil say, well, you know, in our country, this is how farmers deal with these issues. Is it different in China? To have a psychologist from Cameroon say, well, you know, we get a lot of our rice from China. How does that work? Do farmers pay tariffs when they're exporting? I sat at a dinner next to the finance minister of Egypt, which was a huge surprise to me. And he said, you know, we're a rice-growing country ourselves, and unlike China with its 5,000 years of history, we have 7,000 years. And I said, oh really, why don't you tell me how rice is cultivated in Egypt? And just in these dialogues, it's broadened my thinking about what I should include in the narrative to make the reader as interested as possible and as grounded as possible in this very complex and sort of obtuse subject.